You're live, Mayor.
All right. I've got this, boy, according to this thing Martin's doing, before I even do a call it to order. No, we call it to order first. Let's call to order the special meeting of the City Council Planning Commission for, what are we, February 23rd. City Clerk, you have an announcement?
The city attorney would like to make an announcement regarding the teleconferencing of this meeting. You're muted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you again, actually. The proceedings adopted for this meeting meet or exceed the standards set forth in Governor Newsom's Order N-25-20 as it pertains to the Brown Act. And this allows public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference in order to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Please conduct the roll call, and then I'll ask the mayor to recognize me afterward to confirm certain matters for the record. Thank you.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Present.
Councilmember Burrows.
Present.
Councilmember Zafar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Here.
Mayor Hudson.
Here.
Commissioner Alpert.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Here.
Commissioner Marks.
Here.
Vice Chair Kuznick.
Here.
And Chair Wallace.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Floor recognizes the city attorney.
Thank you. Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all council members and commissioners can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each council member and commissioner believes, based on facial recognition or voice recognition or otherwise, that members present today at this hearing are who they represent themselves to be. And seeing no objection to that, I will turn the meeting back over to you, Mr. Mayor, with the reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Thank you. At this time, public comment is open. This is a special meeting. The public is permitted to address the city council only on items on tonight's agenda. If you decide to speak at this time, you will not be allowed to speak a second time. This is where I know Martin's testing me, because there is no appellant tonight, correct? After the application presentation. If you wish to speak at this time under public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or dial 9 on your telephone. I see one speaker coming in already. When it's your turn to speak and call upon a name, or blah, 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 whatever. We have, first, before we do anything, we have a written comment. Also, we've received just one. Is that correct, City Clerk? And we've all received a copy of it. We do not read the written comments at the meeting. Is there anyone else who wishes, again, this is to speak before item 2.1 or 2.2, what are we, 3.1 and 3.2? We have 32 attending. Okay, that, if I'm reading this correct, they have taken it down. And okay, public comment is going to close, going once. Up, we're back to the one person who wants to speak, and it's down. Are you bringing them in, Christina, or is he just changing his mind? Okay, public comment is closed. Let's go on to the first item of the night. I believe that is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation Update presentation. Is Ryan going to take that, or Debbie, are you going to start him off?
Actually, Cindy Yee, our senior planner, will be taking you through the presentation, and Ryan will be assisting her tonight.
Oh, good. I'm sorry, I didn't see Cindy on this presentation. Cindy, you have the floor.
Thank you. I am off mute. Okay. So thank you. Good evening, Mayor Hudson, Chair Alpert, council members and Planning Commission, as well as staff and the public. We are excited this evening to provide this presentation on housing with the goal of providing the community and our decision makers a primer on the housing planning process. Tonight will give us an opportunity to get comfortable with phrases, acronyms, and requirements, and really focus the presentation on how the city will develop and implement our long-term vision for housing. So next slide, Ryan. So to answer the questions, what is RHNA? We want to take a step back and talk about state housing law and the city's obligation under state law. So state law requires all cities plan for the housing needs of everyone in the community. That planning effort begins with the state mandated regional housing needs allocation that we refer to as RHNA. The RHNA process kicks off an 8-year planning cycle in which Summerhill must plan for the projected housing needs of the city. We are in a current cycle that started in 2015 and will end in 2023, and the next housing cycle will begin in 2023 and ends in 2031. Next slide. So there are various levels of government that play a specific role in planning for housing. The state identifies how many housing units the Bay Area must plan for in that 8-year cycle. The regional governing agency for the Bay Area, referred to as the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, then creates the method for how these units will be divided amongst the 101 cities and 9 counties in the Bay Area. Once the city receives our allocation of units, we then must prepare a document called the housing element, which will plan and program for the city's share of units. This element must be certified by the state to ensure that we are adequately in planning for and have created a viable plan to produce the units that have been allocated to Summerhill. The housing plan has to consider the housing needs for all income levels. Next slide. So these housing income levels are divided into 5 income levels ranging from extremely low to above moderate. And when one refers to affordable housing in Summerhill, affordable housing is defined as affordable to those making an annual income of approximately $100,000 per person for a one-person household. In Summerhill, professions that are identified as lower income households would include a new teacher, a dental assistant, a paramedic, or a restaurant cook. Next slide. So in planning, we are often asked, why do we have to plan for more homes? Why do we have to build more housing? Because the city already appears to be built out. And I think it's important to consider this question in a regional context. The Bay Area is lucky enough to be a region rich with jobs, and businesses are attracted to this area for various reasons. We have a highly educated workforce, lots of innovation in technology, and the climate is exceptionally great, like days like this. And so over the next 35 years, the region is expected to add an additional 1.4 million jobs in the Bay Area. And so in order to fill these jobs and the demands that these jobs bring, we have to have a population to support those jobs. So the Bay Area is expected to grow by another 2.7 million people. And in order to keep up with the job and the population growth, the region then has to build another 1.5 million homes to meet the housing demands for these jobs and population growth. Next slide. So as you can see on this chart, job growth has historically far surpassed new home construction. Even after the Great Recession of 2008, Contra Costa County has been adding a ratio of 5 new jobs to every 1 housing units constructed. In Silicon Valley, nearly 200,000 jobs were added while 50,000 homes were built. And you can see that in every part of the Bay Area, that same ratio of more jobs to less housing is seen throughout the region. Next slide. So ABAG projects that the region has to produce, on average, nearly 50,000 units each year through 2040 before we'll even begin to see a slowdown closer to 35,000 units a year to keep up with the projected job and population growth. The Bay Area hasn't seen this pace of housing production that ABAG wants us to produce since the 1970s and 80s. And while the Bay Area is still rapidly building homes, we're falling short of this production goal. And every year we fall short only adds more pressure to future years to produce. Next slide. So there are a number of factors that are contributing to the drop in Bay Area housing production. As I mentioned, we're still seeing the effects of the Great Recession and recovery from that. There's also land, construction, and labor costs that continue to rise, and a lack of subsidies or funding to build affordable housing, amongst other things. Next slide. So to address these factors of housing production, the state has assigned our region an exponential increase to our future RHNA. The Bay Area's RHNA is expected to increase from our current cycle at 188,000 units to 441,000 units through 2031. Next slide. And in Saramone, our RHNA is planning to go from 1,400 units to just over 5,000 units, with at least 61% of those units needing to be planned for households that fall into the moderate and lower income category. Next slide. And so in the slide, you can see really a comparison of how Saramone's RHNA is in relation to the surrounding cities. In unincorporated Contra Costa County, you'll see over 7,500 units that are that unincorporated Contra Costa County will have to plan for. Danville is over 2,000. Dublin has over 3,700 units that they'll need to plan for in this next 8-year cycle. And in Saramone, what that represents is an expected household growth of over 18% by 2031. Next slide. And so because of the extensive multi-year community engagement process, Saramone is now in the process of preparing our housing element, in addition to taking advantage of the opportunity to do a comprehensive general plan update. Because housing touches so many different things, from traffic to park needs to utility requirements, safety and open space, all of those things will have to go hand in hand when we do our general plan update. We plan to receive our final draft allocation this spring, which will then begin an appeal process through ABAG on the allocation that Saramone is assigned. And then later this year, Saramone will get our final allocation. Next slide. So Saramone has already started our general plan and housing element update. The city just released a request for proposals for consultants to assist our general plan and housing element update last week. Our expectation is the housing element will go through an extensive public outreach and engagement process over the next 2 years, and will be ready for adoption and certification in late 2022. Next slide. So for this next housing element update, our focus will be on reviewing the current housing sites that are in Saramone and evaluating what development standards are going to be needed and what zoning will be needed in order to accommodate for these new 5,000 units that Saramone must plan for. We are going to be looking at primarily putting housing closer to where jobs, retail, and services are located, and putting homes on previously developed properties that we call infill development to take the pressure off of developing on green fields or open space. Next slide. And so our expectations for our long-term housing goals for this housing element will be to continue to identify constraints to building and producing the units, creating local policies and programs, and really quantified objectives on how we will meet the allocation that we've been assigned. We'll be taking another look at our inclusionary housing ordinance and other state legislation that gives us the ability to help speed up and produce the units that we've been assigned. So density bonus law, several Senate bills related to streamlining, as well as accessory dwelling unit production. Next slide. And to keep in mind, legislation continues to move forward in Sacramento related to housing production. Over the last several years, we have seen a number of new housing bills that have really changed at a local level how the city can plan for housing and to increase production. But we're seeing some additional considerations right now in Sacramento, things such as creating an opportunity to allow for two residential units on within single family zones, exemptions from certain reviews and requirements, and allowing for housing developments in commercial zones. So those are all things that the city's been tracking and will potentially affect, our next housing element process. Next slide. And so really the bottom line here is that what we're seeing with the allocation of units for the Bay Area and for cities within the Bay Area is that there's a major focus on increasing housing production. And that would include expanding housing sites, eliminating local restrictions and constraints, allowing for housing by right, increasing funding for affordable housing, and holding cities accountable for the goals and the programs that we have put into our housing element, and making sure that we're not just planning for the housing, but we're creating a viable plan to help support that production. And we're seeing another focus from the state on penalties and making sure that the cities are held accountable to being able to increase the production. Next slide. And so with that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions that you might have, or questions to Ryan or Debbie.
Okay, I'm going to ask each of our members here today if they have a question. We'll go through all of us. We're going to go in alphabetical order. Start, Gary Alpert, do you have any questions of staff?
No questions at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Armstrong?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
You guys are going to find out if I can do the alphabet, huh? Commissioner Howard?
No questions,
Okay.
Mayor.
Commissioner Kuznick?
I do have a question. On packet page 19, this is the SB 10, where it says housing units located in a transit-rich area, job-rich area. In this legislation, do they define how a area is is there some objective standard by which they define transit-rich and or job-rich?
There is, and I don't have that directly in front of me. The traditional cities that have light rail has BART, but San Ramon is considered an area that is high resource, and so because of that factor, San Ramon is considered a place where you're growing unit allocations from 1,400 to 5,000 because we are near BART and we are near transit. We may not have that transit here, but we do have the means to get people or our very close proximity to that transit.
It's us, Gene. We're jobs rich, we're urban infill, and more importantly, the definition, though I'm always fighting to clarify that we do this, is to have at least 2 routes connecting within 15-minute headway. I love it when people say, can you make it 10? And BART doesn't even go below 15. But the major battle I'm dealing with right now, at least, is the mobility hub trying to do something with the intermodal, and with Innovate 680, we're in. We're not going to duck this one. We're just include us as a transit-rich area. Okay, another one, Gene?
Good.
I lost.
Thank you.
You went off my map there. Okay, Commissioner Marks.
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Perkins, or Councilmember Perkins, you can have both. You're on mute.
I'll have questions later. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Barros.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy, for presentation. Question is regarding, I just want to know how many, as per San Ramon policy, or do we have any plan on how many units we are going to allocate per 100 new home development as affordable housing?
Yeah, sure. So what you're referring to is what we typically refer to as inclusionary housing policy, affordable inclusionary housing policy. In San Ramon, we adopted just a few years ago our inclusionary housing ordinance and commercial linkage fee ordinance, where the focus is that 15% of the units within a housing development would be required to provide units on site as the basis of the affordable housing that they would provide. So for every 100 units, at least 15 of those units would be built on site. There are some caveats to that depending on what type of housing, multifamily versus single family, and a few other factors that deal with that. But generally speaking, it's a 15% requirement for inclusionary.
So is that mean that to meet our RENA 15,111, we need to approve development for 100,740 units?
So I think if you do the straight math, right, for the 5,000 units, and if not every project will be 100% affordable. We have done that in San Ramon, but it's rare that you'll find a development that will be 100% affordable. At most, we're seeing 15%. Sometimes we'll see a 25% requirement like we have been doing in Doherty Valley. But you can, as you've done the math, for every project that we build, if only 15% of those units are going to be affordable, we're going to have to build a lot more units of market rate in order to make that, to meet that affordable requirement.
Okay, because if we are going with the 15% for 5,011 units, we are looking at 100,740 units. Just to make everybody aware of it. Thank
Okay,
you.
Commissioner Wallace.
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, Councilmember Zafar. You went on mute. You're back on mute.
I do have a question. I have a question. Am I?
You're
yeah,
breaking
I
up,
know why.
Sabina. You may have to start again.
Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I had a question around ADU production, Cindy. How do we use ADU production to meet our goals? And because I would say I would think it falls in the inclusionary housing category, depending on the size and the cost, and if it's one of the metrics that we can use, how does that work? Is it particular lots that we have that can't have ADUs?
Did you get that, Cindy? Because you really broke up at the end, Sabina.
I think so. I think I got the gist of the question. So ADU production, there's a number of different factors that deal with ADUs. We see new state legislation and that is requiring cities now to relax the process in which cities approve ADUs. And so over the course of the last couple of years, the process to approve an ADU has gotten less cumbersome. You can now get an ADU approved basically through a building permit. There's no, it's a ministerial approval that the city has. There's also less obligations for parking, for setbacks, et cetera. And so the state has really required all cities in California relax the ability to create this type of housing. San Ramon and a number of cities do not actually get credit for ADUs being built as affordable units if there's no affordable housing agreement that is signed and recorded on the title of the property that obligates that unit to be rented to an affordable household. And so creating an ADU creates more supply in San Ramon and meets a number of cities' goals to create more variety of housing and more opportunities to build more units. They do not count towards our RENA allocation, and other than the fact that they're considered above moderate production. So they don't count towards our lower income requirements. We do identify those units as being new units at above moderate.
Okay, so they can count in the market rate for RENA though, right? So that's one way we can plan. And I guess I wasn't very clear. Are there clear guidelines around how this is planned to be, even if it's market rate, to meet those RENA numbers?
I don't know if I caught the full question, but I can try.
Am I breaking off?
Yeah. Yes.
You are. So every year, the city prepares an annual housing element progress report. And each year, we calculate all of the building permits that have been issued for ADUs and for market rate units and affordable units. And we provide that to the state to show our progress and our track in terms of meeting our RENA allocation.
Thank you. I think I have to shut down that video game.
Well, wait till you finish the free cell. I had a couple questions. Just
Thank
joking.
you, Cindy.
The spring of this year, we should find out if there are appeals. There's no way of telling right now if there'll be any appeals or what the result will be, but correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy. At this time, 8 years ago or whatever, we were starting this cycle, our first number that came down was 951, and after the appeal, we ended up at 1417. And if I'd listened to Debbie and fought a little harder, maybe we would have been able to knock, we probably wouldn't, but she's laughing at me. Is that about correct? It doesn't mean that you can just say, yeah, we're going to go up, 500 or whatever, but it is something to be concerned about. 5111 is not likely to be the final number.
That's right. And so because the Bay Area, it has already been assigned our final Bay Area allocation, it means that any appeals that are granted in one jurisdiction or one county will then affect other cities and other jurisdictions in other places. So the only way that cities can reduce is if they add more units to other cities. And so we have to expect that the 441,000 units are going to be what the Bay Area has to plan for. It's just a matter of whose appeals are going to be granted by ABAG to determine our final allocation. And as you are correct, it was below 1,000 when we first got our draft allocation back in 2014. And then ultimately we ended up at 1,400 units because units had to shift from other cities and were added to San Ramon.
Okay.
And I can add to that, Mayor Hudson. SCAG has actually just completed their appeal process, and of the 52 appeals that were filed, 2 were withdrawn and only 2 were amended. And so doing the math, 48 appeals were denied for reallocating the RENA allocation. So our 5,100, hopefully we'll see a reduction, but as Cindy did say, it's a push and pull. It's like the balloon, you push on one side, has to go somewhere else to keep the balloon in its shape. But we will be doing all we can to hopefully, satisfy our RENA allocation, but make sure it works for for San Ramon.
Good. What had me concerned is the last time this came up, one of the appellants who was successful was Lafayette. I think that's where a lot of this number came from. And Lafayette's numbers is even higher than Danville's. I mean, if they were granted this appeal, this number could be very soft, and that's not good news. But what you just said is very much appealing. Can you go to page 7 also? Want to ask and make sure I understand this. It's the asterisk at the bottom. HCD may adjust amount due to special county consideration. Can we expect anything there? Or is that just nice, cute words that kind of standard, maybe, but don't count on it because we're Contra Costa?
Well, this asterisk refers to kind of the area median income, right? And so because each county has some slight adjustment factors that need to be accounted for in area median, every so often that area median will fluctuate. And so Alameda County and Contra Costa County, where we're similar in county type, you may see a lower or higher area median income in one county over the other because of different factors.
Okay, I was kind of hoping it might have something to do with super districts, but prayer seems to be the order. Last thing is just a comment, if you could go to page 9 before I forget, because I'm old and all. If you look at the I guess they're not the twin towers, the triplet towers, there's the problem in a nutshell. And keep an eye on this page, don't let it go away. Those are the people that probably should be doing 2/3 of the housing because they're getting 2/3 of the job, and we just reduced their number. So we have Sridhar Burrows, you want to speak again? Is that correct?
Yeah, so based on the graph, right, I see that job growth, like as it is keep increasing, but now due to pandemic, a lot of these jobs, they are changing, right? The work nature of the work, like rather than working at a workplace, now they are moving these jobs to like remote working and all that. So how far is this job growth is going to be valid after the pandemic, or while this pandemic is going on? So is there any possibility to appeal on this one, to review on this?
That question has come up with ABAG, and in the course of this allocation and methodology practice that we've been going through the last year, a number of people have been vocal about the concerns of the pandemic and what impacts that might have to housing production, population growth, and of course job growth, which is really what's driving those other factors. The state has said that our allocation is not going to change from the 441,000 that's already been assigned, regardless of where the pandemic outcome is going to be and the fallout from that. We won't be able to predict what that will mean, but ABAG does their regional growth projections through 2050, and every 5 years they do a new update to their regional plan. And so we will see another iteration of this, but we'll still be in the same housing cycle when they reevaluate the potential impact of the pandemic to job growth. But our allocation is expected to stay the same, as the state is not planning to make those changes to the region's numbers.
If it helps, Sridhar, I have what we call the growth pattern for the super districts, whatever that is, but and the South Central Contra Costa County from now, or 2015 through 2050, is expected to go down 9%. So, I mean, we knew this. We went through the COVID at all these meetings at ABAG, and the thought that you just brought up was brought up several times, and it went nowhere. For whatever reason, this has to be turned in a timely manner so you can guess the rest of this sentence. And that's why we are where we are. But in any case, if there are no further questions, let's open it up. We have 2 attendees that want to speak. They are John Minot and caller and user number 1. Can you bring your presentation down? We've got Jim Blickenstaff, also 3 attendees. This is a public comment on the RENA numbers now. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? 4, Joyce Carr. Anyone else? Well, let's start with John Minot, and let's see what our time looks like. Yeah, let's do the 3 minutes if you want. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Thanks everyone for your time. My name's John Minot. I'm a member of East Bay for Everyone. We're an all-volunteer organization with members throughout the East Bay, including in San Ramon. We advocate for more housing at all income levels, affordable and market rate throughout the Bay Area. We look forward to working with San Ramon taking advantage of the upcoming housing element cycle, whatever the numbers end up being, to help figure out ways to ensure that the zoning and other planning policies help welcome new neighbors. So we are going to be engaging as you go through this process, and we're encouraged with this discussion you're having. Just a couple of preliminary observations. I know that people are concerned about the feasibility of the RENA numbers, whether they're what they are now or in some other form. I would encourage people to look at the RENA numbers not as a sacrifice, but as an opportunity. More homes closer together in a level of urban infill means more community, more ability for seniors to age in place, fewer cars, carbon emission, pollution, more city tax revenue for public amenities. And it means that more of the people who work here can also afford to live here. So another item, it's often said that San Ramon and places like it are built out. I disagree with that. It is built on, but infill allows you to get more density in an existing area without going out into green fields and the hills and so forth. We have noticed that a lot of your previous housing element was already developed sites. And I want to let you know that under new state housing law, it is important to put a lot more assessment on the realistic opportunity of that site, whether someone actually wants to build there and so forth. So that's going to be something to pay attention to, using non-vacant sites as well as reusing sites from the previous cycle. One more seat.
Let me help your cause right here a little bit. Did
Sure.
you speak at ABAG in the MTC meetings?
I did not personally, maybe once or twice. My organization certainly did.
Did you ever hear the term that 441,000 was too low, that we should not accept it and go to 1 million homes?
I was not a strong part of that. I know that that was. I know that was discussed. I know that one of the arguments for the larger numbers is making up prior cycles underbuilding.
Okay, just want to give you that opportunity. Thank you very much, John. We'll take that under consideration, and we'll move on to call in user number 1.
Okay.
Call in, you're on. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to say that the RENA stats are so outdated. To blindly follow the state's legislative demand blindly are stupid. I really hope that we can fight back and at least demand that they investigate their numbers after the Chinese virus and then update the numbers accordingly, because these affordable housings are a hoax. Our own police and teachers can't even access them. They are basically, in the end, going to be sold to rich foreigners who are considered affordable prospects in our country. And I feel that that is not only a discrimination, but it's also a persecution to our own citizens. And to Mr. is it John or the speaker before me, he is not a volunteer. It's very clear that he's an activist. He's with an organization. I want to know if he is actually affiliated with any affordable housing builders. These people, they are politically organized to push for us to live like we're in Shanghai or in Singapore when we are not Asians, we're Americans. We don't have to live like that. And it will just not only downgrade our quality of life, it will bring us a lot of parking issues and just, trash issues and education issues. These are the issues that we residents, we citizens have to put up with, and that's like garbage thrown in our courts. And they just wash their hands after these housings are built. They make their money and they're gone. We're the ones who have to clean up after them. I would at least ask Ms. E and our attorney, Mr. License, to please kindly push back and demand for rectified stats. That way we can at least be more palatable to the demands. Otherwise, this is treating us like geese. They just want to harvest foie gras. They just want to fatten our liver and then kill us to get the fat liver. They don't care about us. So I implore the mayor and the city officials to please push back on behalf of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Blickenstaff? You're on, Jim. Got on mute.
Yeah, it just popped up. There's a delay there, I guess. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I understand math exercises. I understand the state and ABAG doing mathematics on housing needs versus jobs needs. And it's a nice equation when you look at it on paper. But in reality, you have to apply that to the real world. You have to apply that, what they're saying now, which I don't agree with in terms of numbers, to your situation on the ground. You have to understand roadway limitations. You have to understand space limitations. You have to understand water limitations and the pandemic effect, which is long-term, very long-term, and the consequences of trying to pack in numbers, if that's going to be your driving force, is mathematics of it, is more high-rise. And the bottom line, to get the densities that other agencies that don't have San Ramon's interests at heart, they have development and housing interests at heart, is to end up going high-rise. And then we could end up being Walnut Creek or Concord in 20 years. So I think you need to be proactive in pushing back on these numbers, demanding accuracy with them, and demanding respect for your position as representatives of San Ramon to protect your citizens, protect your city, its character, and the quality of life, when these numbers are obviously in opposition to that quality of life. I think, for example, there's an old model incorporated here that is out of date. With telecommunication and telecommuting, the epidemic has demonstrated jobs can be transferred over long distances. I have a friend who is a secretary for a company that is in Maryland, and she goes to office every day. It's walking from her kitchen to her upstairs bed office, and she spends her 8 hours in her house about 2,000 miles away from her job center. This is the future. Rather than using numbers of the past to overload our housing needs, we need to understand how the future is going to look and adapt to that, because we can't keep pushing more on our water resources, our air resources, and our space resources to demand the demands of housing advocates in Sacramento and in ABAG and other areas that have a one-dimensional look at this. So I understand the one-dimensional look at this. I just don't appreciate it for how it's going to have a negative effect on the people of San Ramon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Joyce Carr.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Joyce Carr.
No, I just said good evening. That's okay.
One of my concerns for quality of life for the city continues to be the traffic congestion and the number of people. At the same time that the city staff and city council acknowledge the worsening traffic congestion, et cetera, we continue to discuss the okaying of new projects that will further increase traffic congestion, et cetera. And of course, this is including thousands of units just approved in the city walk plan. And now the Bishop Branch 6 project with its 404 units equaling 800 more cars. More traffic congestion will come to San Ramon. And then the Marketplace development, a 5-story residential development where a popular shopping center is currently located. It makes no sense to me. This path will very much change the character and serenity of our city, which all of our residents love so much and appreciate. If we continue on this path, life in San Ramon will be forever changed, and there will be no going back. Whatever the state is thinking, please stand up for us in front of the state. Please support the constituents. And I want to also add another comment. Something I heard tonight was that I'm hearing with all these units are going up, there's 15% is going to be affordable. And that seems to be the big reason for all of this is affordable. Yet I heard tonight, 15%, around 15%. So again, please support the constituents and listen to us, and let's keep San Ramon the nice, peaceful, serene city that we all love so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. That concludes the public comment for RENA numbers. We'll close the public comment. Cindy, I want to make sure I heard what I just heard. City Walk was approved, but we haven't approved anything at Marketplace, have we?
No.
Okay. Now is the time for, let me see if I can get back to your annotated here, Martin. I'm jumping around. This is for council and commission discussion. I would go through each one of you if you want to again, but let me ask first if somebody wants to jump out there. If not, I'll start doing the same thing I did before, starting with you, Gary. So you better be prepared. Do you have any comments or questions that you'd like to discuss? Because there's no action on this tonight.
No. So Cindy, one of the things we hear all the time is our neighboring cities do not have to build houses. You know, Danville never does. Could you comment on that, please, for the benefit of us as well as the public that might be listening?
Sure. So, you know, I think one of the points that I would make to that is that RENA has always been a tool for cities to plan and program for housing. And all cities in the Bay Area are planning for our allocation. Over the last several years and last cycles, there has been a far less allocation to surrounding jurisdictions like Danville, but increases in places like Dublin and Pleasanton. And there are always different methodologies that go into that factor. In this next cycle, we're seeing that Danville is getting a 2,000 unit allocation. They'll have to plan for that. But we're also seeing as part of that, state law is requiring that we not just plan for it, but we really have to be conscious of how these units actually get developed. And so if you're not seeing production now in other jurisdictions, I can only imagine with the way that state law is going that you will start seeing that production.
Great. Thank you, Cindy.
I would say even that Lafayette's going to get it worse than Danville. I know 5,000 is more than 2,000, but not when you don't have any land or any business park or virtually any jobs. This is extremely hard on Danville. That's why they're leading the charge to try and change things. Okay, Councilmember Armstrong, let's go to you.
Cindy, there's been some talk that there might be some double counting of the numbers between state finance and HCD. Can you comment to that and where that might be going?
That is something that has been brought to the attention of ABAG through the public hearing and appeal process, and we'll continue to address those as we get through the appeal. But as Southern California has already started their RENA cycle and allocation, we're seeing that argument hasn't really been validated by Southern California. And so most of the cities that appealed their RENA were on that basis of the double counting. But as Debbie said, 49 or 50 of those 54 that appealed were unsuccessful in making that argument.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Howard. you have some questions or comments?
I don't really have anything other than this is my first arena rodeo, and I am taken by the fact that there's some resignation. I think, especially given the appellate numbers that Debbie cited with ABAG, and so it seems to me the best course of action is to see what happens at the next stage and see if we have any appellate issues, albeit as unlikely as they may be, and then get to work on somehow making these numbers work in our community. But other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Just as a point of clarification, Debbie, was the appeal just at ABAG, or did you say the whole state?
No, it was a Southern California Association of Governments. So it's our Southern California partners who are, so the state, the regional housing needs allocation process is phased in throughout the state of California. To imagine HCD looking at over 190 housing elements at the same time is a bit of a arduous task to take on. So the state's divvied up into regions. And so the lower division, or SCAG as it's called, is going first, which is kind of the Los Angeles, Orange County region. And then SANDAG, as we call it, San Diego area, is further along than the SCAG area is.
Okay, Ms. Kuznick.
So just a quick clarification, when the City Walk was approved, and it's the number of people quote all the time is the 4,500, that would seemingly, take care of these 5,000 units, but that was part of the previous RENA numbers. So are there still a certain portion of that could be counted towards these new RENA numbers?
So when we talk about RENA, we are looking at the number of units that are allocated. And then when we meet that RENA, that building permit has to be issued for that unit in order for us to count that towards meeting our RENA. So with City Walk, because of the 25-year window, it'll span several housing cycles that we can count those units towards.
Thank you. That's a important clarification, and I don't think the average citizen appreciates those small details. So thank you.
Commissioner Marks, aren't you glad you're not doing this anymore?
Yes, I am, and I have no comments at this point.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Perkins.
Okay, let's see. For Debbie or Cindy or I keep getting asked, and we get public comment that, is there a way to fight this? Are there examples of cities that have actually fought RENA and won? That we declare ourselves independent from ABAG and we don't want to do this anymore. Is there any examples of cities that have been successful?
Well, I can say that the city of Pleasanton a number of years ago in the last housing cycle had a housing cap and actually was litigated and lost and had all their commercial and residential permits stopped, or the commercial permits stopped until they started producing their housing needs. So the Attorney General is very much in the forefront of housing production now and at the forefront of the litigation. And Huntington Beach, I think, is a lawsuit pending against them for not meeting their housing needs too. So it's not a position we'd want to put the city in, but it is at the forefront of the state. And the Attorney General is personally taking care of all the cases for filing lawsuits against those cities that are not meeting their RENA allocation or their production needs.
Okay, so you're not aware of any successful challenges to the whole RENA process?
There's been the few that we mentioned, Riverside, and then a smaller community from the SCAG region that had a reduction in their allocation, but it wasn't significant, if that's what you're referring to.
Okay.
I'd say no, really has not gone over well with the state.
I was I guess being more absolute in that, has anybody been successful in not participating at all? Not just getting reductions, from big numbers like 5,100 to 4,800, okay. But actually saying, you know what, we're not going to be part of this program.
No, no cities to my knowledge.
Okay. So if I took the below market rate numbers, low, very low, and extremely low, add them together and divide by 15%. So that's 3126. There's 3,126 units that are low, very low, and extremely low. And so those count towards affordable units in our 15% exclusion in our ordinance, right?
And moderate.
The moderate count?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means we're going to be trying to find locations for more than 25,000 housing units throughout the city. Is that right? We're going to be looking for places to put 25,000 units or more.
That's a good characterization. So similar to our current housing element where we're assigned 1,400 units, we have over 8,000 opportunities to create units in San Ramon because we know that you can't just build all affordable at 1,400 units. You do have to have the market rate.
So you take your affordable package, you divide by 15%, which is a multiplier, effectively of roughly 8. And that gives you how many housing opportunity sites you need to find. Okay. And you said ADUs don't count unless they become designated. And this duplex thing, I'm sure the same rules would apply unless you designate it as one of these affordable housing categories. Duplexes won't count either. Is that right?
That's right, unless there's an agreement that's signed and recorded on the title for it to be rented out as affordable.
Okay. Something that's kind of a future element when we go through the general plan amendment, I want to find a way to protect our grocery stores. A substantial part of the objection to the marketplace, one is the scale and scope of the apartment complex there, but the other part is the loss of Nob Hill. I would suppose that if Nob Hill was somehow to be retained in a future plan, that some of the objection would go away. Not all of it, I understand. But grocery stores are very, very important to neighborhoods. And that applies to the Walmart at the south end of town, Lucky, Safeway, all of those play a major role in the community. And I want to make sure that we are aware of can we find ways to preserve those if we have a mixed use shopping center that the grocery store is somehow protected. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Veros. And then Commissioner Wallace.
Yeah, so regarding the current RENA cycle, it looks like we have 1,417 units, right? So last time when I checked, if I remember right, there were like 800 already, 800 units identified, maybe not. But do we have any number like how many we already have in plan and which we can meet for 1,417?
Yeah, we're actually in the process right now of updating our annual housing element report. Ryan will be providing that presentation in March to the Planning Commission and the City Council. But we have added units in each of those income categories. But because our last RENA allocated over 70% as affordable, and we have not built any all affordable projects, we are behind on the low and very low, as well as the moderate.
Okay, so that means we need to catch up current and the future.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Wallace.
I was going to point out the math. 15% affordable units basically boils down to for every affordable unit, you have to build 6 market rate units. So in order to get the 3,100 affordable units that we've been assigned in the current cycle, we have to build about 18,000 market rate units. So that's about 21,000 units we have to plan for in the next cycle. With respect to City Walk, as you know, that's a program that's been planned out for 25 years. So for our current cycle, the 2023 through 2031 cycle, there's only a portion of the 4,500 units that we've approved that we can count towards our arena numbers, maybe only a quarter of that. So needless to say, we're going to be looking for a lot of units outside of City Walk to put some of those units on. With respect to what Councilmember Perkins said, about a year ago, we changed the designation on a number of our shopping centers from mixed use to retail for the reason to preserve the retail environment. But I believe there's still 5 shopping centers in San Ramon that still have a mixed use designation, one of which is at the top of Bollinger across from Club Sport, as does Marketplace. And we learned that, courtesy of Senator Wiener, that everything that we had in place in 2018 is now frozen until 2024. So we cannot go into those shopping centers that are designated mixed use and change them to a retail designation to make sure they stay a shopping center and not a 5-story apartment building. So we're sort of locked into some of these things, courtesy of Sacramento. So the challenges that we face are manifold in terms of numbers and what our tools are in the toolbox to deal with those numbers.
Thank you. And I would just add at the end, because we're going to get on to the next one, a couple of the comments. Let me make one thing clear. Anybody that was on the line that night we went through methodology will tell you no one pushed back harder than I did. No, I got more compliments from Danville staff than I've ever received in 24 years on this council. But the reality is, you're not just fighting Sacramento, you're fighting Santa Clara County, which had a huge drop in the numbers they were allocated. Just a quick little show of who has the power. 2/3 of the housing is on the peninsula, 3 counties, and they should have had 2/3 of the housing, and they did up until we got to the last meeting. All of you that have been in politics, you ever seen that ever happen before? It does seem to wait for the census if you haven't seen one lately. The telecom question that was brought up, or statement that was brought up earlier, that is what's going to hurt us even more. To quote a supervisor in Santa Clara County, they're going to drive somewhere, wherever they live. Well, you're going to have people that may have to commute 3 times a week. I've heard of 3 options given, and they can live here and then only have to commute into work 3 times. You're going to see more of that. People need to remember why we're doing all this crazy stuff. It's about vehicle miles traveled. SB 375, every 8 years, the cycle, transportation and housing is about climate change. And that's the big elephant they stand on in the room when they shout, you're going to do this. Now, I don't think you can anymore make these numbers that we're talking about realistically. You can't build that many in this town during the cycle they're talking about. But we do need to produce. There's 2 things here. One, staff has got to come up with a housing element that's going to look really, nobody's going to like it. And then once you do, if somebody can show they can make it, then we're under the gun again. But if it takes you more vehicle miles traveled to go shopping than you would if you lived within walking distance, you have something to stand on. So there's going to be a lot of tools there and arguments of where we're going to do this. I'm not going to put or expect anyone to believe that we're going to build 21,000 homes in San Ramon before 2030. It's not going to happen. But if we build a total of 5,000 or come anywhere near that number, you show me who else is going to make their numbers. You really think Danville's going to make 2,000? Or that Lafayette's going to make 3,000? It's the old story. I don't have to be the first runner. I just have to be ahead of the other person so that the tiger can eat them instead of me. And that's really the way I'm looking at this point. We have got to do something. You can't hide a 10 million square foot business park from Sacramento. They know what's there. But as we're doing the kind of planning that we're doing right now, we're 2/3 of the way of keeping us ahead of that last runner. That's my opinion. So good luck, staff. Come up with some miracle. Let's build a 50-story apartment right in the middle of the creek. You can put it in my backyard. Other than that, Sabina, you've got a last comment, and then we're going on to, where are we on to? Go ahead, Sabina.
Yeah, so if I'm breaking off, let me know and I'll turn off my video so at least you can hear me. So one thing I just, to add on to what Vice Mayor said, I want to make sure we make retail part of this. The whole idea is walkable to amenities. And so as we plan for this, we want to make sure there's elements of retail built into whatever we're planning. The other one is I've had some people bring my attention.
Sabina, it's really bad. We're going to have to try it again and just talk to staff direct because it's not working, unless you want to try it now.
No, and I think I could probably just answer that real briefly. Because we are doing a comprehensive general plan update along with the housing element, we will be doing fiscal analysis, we will be doing growth management review, we'll be doing economic analysis. And so all of that will go hand in hand with our housing element update.
Okay.
And if you can hear me better without the video.
No, you're doing good now. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I think it's competing bandwidth. So just the other comment I wanted to make, I don't know if you guys heard me or not, but was about some people have brought to my attention about housing specifically for teachers. And teachers are obviously very important in our community as well. And they also fall in the category of, where we need to build affordable housing as well. So I would love to explore those opportunities as well, if we have, if there is a way to.
Good. Okay, if there's no further comments or questions, let's get on to the second wonderful presentation of the evening. And that's the Joint Council Commission Study Session, the introduction of Bishop Ranch 6. You guys can read it as well as I can. The staff report will be Cindy Yee again, and you're up, Cindy.
Okay, so real briefly, I'll introduce and then I will turn it over to the applicant who has a short presentation as well. Just to get us oriented here, we're talking about the property located on Camino Ramon. It's a 31-acre site. It's within the North Camino Ramon specific plan, which is the governing land use document for this planning area. The site that we're looking at is identified as Bishop Ranch mixed use, which would allow for office, commercial, and residential land uses on that site. In the surrounding area, we are currently working on this, the walking district, which you'll see in the boundary in red here. And you're also familiar with the City Walk development that was recently approved that is just directly to the south and adjacent to this project area. Just to recap, 404 total residential units are proposed. It's about 18.5 dwelling units per acre, along with a private park and an option for a mix of on-site and payment of in lieu fees to meet their affordable housing requirements. The applicant will go through the project site plan, but just as far as the project review, there are a number of applications that are going to be made for this project. The one to highlight here is the North Camino Ramon specific plan amendment, which will require a rezone of the property and an update to some of the policies that are within the plan. So we did provide some discussion questions. I do have those available on a slide, but I know that the applicant also has a presentation, so I can come back to the discussion questions if time allows. Okay. So I think Denise Cunningham is going to provide the presentation this evening for
Well, let's bring Denise in here and present away.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy, and good evening, Mayor, council members, and Planning Commission. I'm Denise Cunningham. I'm the Vice President of Development with Summerhill Homes, and I'd like to thank you for your time this evening, and also thanks staff for their guidance. It's been very helpful. We also have Robert Freed, Summerhill's CEO, and Kevin Ebrahimi, the Senior Vice President of Development, to answer any questions. And I'd like to start with a brief introduction to Summerhill. Summerhill is a private home builder, and we're a local company. We're located right here in Bishop Branch 8. Summerhill's been in business for 45 years, and we've delivered over 6,000 homes during that period. Our primary focus is in the Bay Area, and we strive to develop the most compatible housing type for each specific site. And this location is a great example of infill development, providing high quality homes near jobs and transit. So we're excited to have the opportunity to bring much needed housing up to the city core. And we are working with Sunset Development on this property. And I would also like to turn this over to Jerry Engen with with Sunset to say a few words, and then I'll come back and finish the presentation.
Thanks, Denise. Jerry, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right, good evening, Mayor Hudson and Chair Wallace and members of the Planning Commission and City Council. For the record, my name is Jerry Engen. I'm Senior Vice President of Development for Sunset Development. I'm pleased to take part in this meeting tonight on behalf of Sunset Development Company. We are in complete support of Summerhill's proposed project. As part of our long-term strategy and in compliance with the city's general plan, to provide much needed housing types in the core of the city, the proposed project will be the second residential neighborhood built within North Camino Ramon specific plan. The project's 100% for sale units, provides a mix of single family and multifamily homes. We selected Summerhill for this important residential project as they are a premier developer that shares Sunset Development's commitment to build a first-class community. Summerhill is a local business, as Denise said, within headquarters in Bishop Branch. We'll continue to work closely with Summerhill and the city as this project moves through the entitlement process and through construction. As we move forward, creating a vibrant, walkable downtown core within Bishop Branch, we are focused on maintaining a successful balance of uses. The conversion of the existing office product at BR6 into a well-designed neighborhood will continue to continue the transformation to a full mixed-use community. The need for housing near jobs is very high, and the project adjacent to City Walk complements the overall desire for live, work, transit-oriented, pedestrian and bicycle-friendly neighborhood. We value all our tenants at Bishop Branch, and the existing office tenants are being offered the opportunity to remain in Bishop Branch in more modern office buildings. Additionally, we purchased the AT&T headquarters at BR 2600 several years ago, which is a 2 million square foot building. We have been converting this from a single tenant corporate headquarters into a multi-tenant building, adding significant capacity to the market. We continue to evaluate the office market, and as it continues to evolve and as our residential and retail businesses mature, we will continue to fine-tune the mix of uses to ensure that our goals to provide the best office value and experience for our tenants and to that Bishop Branch remains one of the most successful communities within the San Ramon Valley. I'm happy to answer any questions for you as we move along.
Okay, commissioners and council members, I'm going to short circuit this. Anybody have any questions before we open the public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, through the mayor.
Yes.
We do have just a few more slides from the applicant.
Oh, Jerry, you tricked me. Okay, let's keep going.
Thank you, Jerry, Mayor. I'd like to give a brief overview of our vision for the community, and then at the end of the presentation, we'd like to get your feedback and comments. Next slide. Okay, this is perfect. The property is located in a priority development area in the North Camino Ramon specific plan. And this is an ideal location for transit-oriented residential housing. The community is within walking distance to transit and shopping, retail, restaurants, and it's across the street from the transit hub, Providing for sale housing in this area complements the recently approved City Walk master plan by bringing a variety of housing to the area. Next slide, please. Promoting walkability and connectivity is a goal of both the specific plan and the master plan. And this community includes enhanced walking paths and multiple connection points along the perimeter. This blends seamlessly with the existing neighborhood and the future City Walk. This new residential community will also expand the customer base for the existing retail. Next slide, please. This site plan includes a total of 404 homes with 3 unique product types. We have townhomes, row homes, and courtyard homes. This creates an opportunity for a range of buyers, including first-time buyers, empty nesters, and local residents that are seeking the convenience of a downtown location. This includes generous setbacks along the perimeter and connectivity and gathering nodes throughout. And the homes have multiple elevation types to provide a diversity of architecture and create an attractive street scene. And then the jewel of the community is this new 2-acre public park. It's at the corner of Executive Parkway and Camino Ramon. And we have the 3 distinct product types for different buyer preferences. And these are generally grouped throughout the community in individual neighborhoods. The homes include 3 and 4 bedrooms and are a range of 1,700 to 3,000 square feet. Each home has a 2-car garage, and guest parking is dispersed throughout the site and exceeds the city requirements. Next slide, please. We have artist concepts showing the vision for our architecture. This is the townhomes, traditional attached townhomes. It has a variety of building sizes, 5, 6, and 7 unit buildings with multiple elevations. These include private decks and porches, and the entries are off of a shared paseo, and the garages are off a shared driveway in the rear. And consistent with the city's inclusionary housing policy, 15% of the attached townhomes will be available to very low, and moderate buyers. Next slide, please. The row homes, these are detached row homes, and they include private yards, the front access from the landscape paseos, and the paseos also serve to provide connectivity throughout the community. And the row homes along the entire northern edge of the new public park face the park to activate this public space. Next slide. And the courtyard homes are 2- and 3-story family homes, single family homes that surround a shared motor court, and they have private yards and generous decks. Select plans include rooftop decks, which provide additional private open space and articulation for the architecture. Next slide. And this is the conceptual plan for the park. The location was selected in consensus with staff and the parks director for easy access to the park from both the community and the greater community, so the residents and the greater community. And we do anticipate working with the city and the Parks Commission to finalize this design. The city has suggested some uses that might be considered for the park. And so we worked with our design team and we've included them on this rendering. And they include, as you could see, we have pickleball courts on the left and children's play areas, and also a large lawn area for informal sports activities. And similar to what was done and approved at City Walk, this park will be privately owned and maintained and publicly accessible. So while the community and the nearby businesses have the enjoyment of a new city park, the city does not have to take on the maintenance responsibilities and costs. So just to recap, we're implementing the North Camino Ramon specific plan by providing high quality housing where it's most needed, delivering a new 2-acre turnkey park, and expanding the connectivity in the city core. So this wraps up Summerhill's presentation, and we appreciate your feedback, and we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll start with just the commissioners and council. Do we have any questions of staff or the applicant? If we have none, we will move to public comment. Public comment is open. Christine, I see one attendee, two attendees. Right now, would you let the two attendees, we'll give them 3 minutes. Call in user one, you're up. Unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I think the applicant being local and being a part of long time San Ramon business is a plus. In terms of their credentials, I don't have any problems with that. However, I understand that I think the affordable housing in the preserves community is kind of slow moving. So I'm wondering if there are foreign buyers that come in with a lot of money. Do we have ordinances that prevent someone from buying up a lot of affordable housing units? Or if someone who has $1 billion and decide to buy up all the units, are they able to buy that? I think what I'm trying to iterate is that we need to have some sort of laws that prevent people from taking advantage of the inventory just because they have the resource, so that we can properly make sure that people who really do need them, like our teachers, our police officers, I really would like to see we have some sort of ordinances that can allow them to tap into these units first. So those are my comments. And if it's possible, I would like to have some answers to my questions. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have staff answer those, but I can tell you, yes, we do. Jim Blickenstaff.
Hello again. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I have, oddly enough, I have mixed feelings about this project because I like the way it's set up and the way it doesn't try to necessarily overbuild at the expense of some parkland or at the expense of the viewscape. I think the way they've done 3-story buildings is a plus here. In fact, it's a little bit of yin and yang in terms of approaches to development that work and other approaches that don't work. The yin to this plan is the 5-story building plan for the marketplace and that serene shopping center that serves a lot of the community. And this plan kind of takes it a different direction. It puts it in areas already more developed and then gives you a residential aspect of a jobs housing balance. It's a little more in keeping with what we have in Bishop Ranch. So I see some pluses there that make it more interesting. The 2-acre park, of course, by city standards, the city has to be aware that's about 2 acres short of a neighborhood park for up to 1,000 people. So you still have to be aware of some park issues you might want to take care of. But it's a lot better than what I've seen. And for example, I think it was Park Gardens on Norris Canyon, where you have a development of 100+ units and you have no park. So I see this as an improvement on that. And I'd like to see the city address something where they can get some amenities, green space amenities for the amount of people that are going to be brought in by this project. And there's always a traffic issue, 800 cars perhaps because of these new residents that will have to be taken care of. And I think we have to focus on making sure as best we can, we don't let traffic take over the quality of life of the city. We got to have a way of controlling that because I've seen traffic and high rise ruin other cities. And I'd like to see San Ramon keep its sense of character that goes back up to 30 years ago. So, but this is a good start. I see potential for dealing with housing in these kind of areas that makes more sense. I'm glad they didn't max out the height of the buildings, which gives it a more of a quality visual look. And there's aspects of this that show promise for the future. So it's not necessarily, like I said, a bad idea like we saw what's proposed in Marketplace. And it sort of gives us that opportunity to see housing more in keeping with how it actually works in terms of our Bishop Ranch and the uniqueness of San Ramon. One other comment real quick. The city should look to the League of California Cities to unify as a response to the state and the developers. Individually, they pick you off. But if you're getting demands to overbuild and screw up your city's quality of life, then you need to go to something like the League of California Cities to find a unity to actually stand up to that. Because I don't think they're going to sue all 18 cities. They may, but I think you got to look at that as your bigger housing issue down the road. Thank you.
Jim, public comment is closed before I'm absolutely in shock. I do want to point out a couple things to you. One, and then I'll let you answer a caller one's question. But the proximity of this park to the intermodal, which I'm fighting to get to be a mobility hub, where you'd have car sharing, bike sharing, scooter sharing, you name everything that, plus the buses that run through there and the transit system that he set up is about as far as you can go for congestion. I've never seen it anywhere else. I'll put it that way, at least in the Bay Area of the 19 cities. I'm still in shock. Jim, was that Jim Blickenstaff? The other thing is the League of California Cities. I mean, Debbie's as far up the chain as you can get as far as discussing what's going on at League, as well as Sabina, I believe, is on the executive committee now. So yeah, if there's a way, they'll find a way. That the state is entrenched on this one. Any other comments from, let's start like we did before, from council members, commissioners, starting with Gary Alpert.
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Council member Armstrong.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Commissioner Howard.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Come on. Gene Kuznick, give us something.
I can do that.
Okay.
So I have a couple of quick comments and mostly just to get these on the record. I have to say that I think it's a really interesting project. I think it has lots of potential, but I'm starting to feel a little anxiety about, places as people are going to start talking about schools and traffic. If you have a tot lot, then you're going to expect children, and children have to go to schools. And as we look at City Walk and that location, it's easy to get to Iron Horse Middle School, but the elementary schools become more problematic. And if you factor in traffic with either getting to Golden View or across the freeway, that's getting to be dicey. I also want to point out to people, if you're on the record or listening, that this is going to impact the Iron Horse Trail. And if people aren't aware, the city doesn't manage the Iron Horse Trail. That's East Bay Regional Parks. And you start adding City Walk and this, that's going to have an impact that doesn't factor into necessarily the way we look at this, but we probably should. So those are the things that I wanted to go on record as we look at the future of this particular project. But at first pass, I like it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marks. You're on mute.
I don't have a comment, but I have a request for Ms. Cunningham. I think it was your second and third slides. We don't have in the packet of information that you gave us initially, and I wonder if you could make hard copies available for the Planning Commission prior to when we have our first commission review of this.
Absolutely.
Okay. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, I think it's too premature to make any kind of comments. I'm here to simply listen and observe.
Very good. Vice Mayor Perkins.
Thank you. First, a question for Jerry. Do you anticipate that the residents at this will have access to the BR transportation amenities that you're offering to the City Walk residents?
Yeah, we've offered that to Summerhill to be able to offer to their tenants. And the one thing that we failed to point out to you, along with the transit center that is directly diagonally across the street, on the south end of that development is directly across from our new transit hub that's planned there as well. So there'll be great access to local transit.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you making those transportation assets available to these residents as well. Questions for Denise and Robert. Looking to the future, because these homes will exist long past 2035 and 2040. I want to make sure that we're looking forward, and I would like to see solar on the roof of each individual unit. I'm going to steal Sabina's thunder here because I know this is near and dear to her heart, but I'd like to see solar on the roof of each of them. I don't know if that's a requirement statewide, but if it isn't, it's probably soon will be. Each house, each individual unit should have wiring, conduit, and switch for a house storage battery. You might make the battery an option at time of purchase, but
Now you're taking mine. He's taking both of ours, Sabina.
Okay, you guys, sorry. Because putting in the wiring, the conduit, and the switch, I know it's a cost to you, but it's cheaper to do at time of construction than it is to retrofit. Each garage, since they're 2-car garages, should have 2 charging stations for electric vehicles. We're going to see more and more families in 15 years from now, that'll have 2 electric vehicles. And so we should plan on having 2 charging stations, 1 on each side of the garage. And I'd like to see wiring for EVs in the guest parking. You don't have to put the charging stations in at this time, but I would like to see you put the wiring in for charging at the guest parking. I really like this. I think that Sunset did a great job in choosing Summerhill, and Summerhill's done a great job in developing the 3 housing products going forward. I appreciate the 15% in the most modest housing, the 15% affordable, and then I know it's a pretty big check you're going to end up writing for the affordable housing in lieu fee, and I'm looking forward to working with either Sunset or others on ways to use that going forward. But I think Summerhill's done a very nice job of this. And thank you very much for the presentation.
Councilmember Burrows?
Nothing to add at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Chair Wallace?
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I had 3 comments to make. The first is the North Camino Ramon specific plan as a requirement for affordable housing. The policy in that plan is to have 25% of the units affordable housing, of which 15% is must build. The other 10% can, at the option, be an in lieu fee. The proposal that is before us doesn't meet those requirements. I've voiced that to staff earlier, and I think that there has to be some consideration about how we're going to deal with that. The second is, if you look at the map for this part of North Camino Ramon, most of the housing was done as mixed use. This is basically pure residential. The reason it was done as mixed use was because we understood that City Center was eventually going to be built, but it was going to be a different type of retail than we were looking at the rest of the North Camino Ramon specific plan area. And I don't like the idea of bits and pieces of changing the plan like that, which leads to my third comment, and maybe this is a longer range vision, but this sort of has to do with how Sunset views the long-term vision for Bishop Ranch. When we did North Camino Ramon back in 2012, we envisioned a retail hub down along Norris Canyon Road, particularly where the Toyota facility is right now. At that time, it was considered as more of a big plate retail, a Lowe's, a Trader Joe's, which we now have someplace else. But that was sort of the vision for the plan. And I can tell you that for the last 3 years, when we had discussions on the Crow Canyon specific plan, what we were continually told is that the type of retail that we had built into the North Camino Ramon specific plan was no longer viable. If that in fact is the case, then I think there needs to be some discussion about whether the plan itself needs to go through a revision or even a major revision so that all the component plans that we have actually fit together in a way that meets the needs of both the city, Sunset, and the region, because obviously people are looking at that section of San Ramon as being a housing hub as opposed to changing the single family homes in South San Ramon to duplexes. So it's a little bit more complicated issue to me, it seems, than how many units we're going to put on that old DR6 office use. Those are my comments at this point.
Okay, thank you. Who's left? Sabina Zafar.
Thank you. I just want to build upon Commissioner Wallace's and Commissioner Jean's comments. That's why you guys are commissioner and do this so much better than we do. But certainly agree on the schools. I think we should at least have the school board take a look at this and provide any comments. I believe these units completely lend themselves to families that will move there. And so for the school board to be aware and give any comment on what schooling would look like if we do bring in these units is going to be important. The other one, again, I think I just mentioned this earlier when we were giving comments, making sure we have some elements of retail, groceries, cafes, amenities, which makes it a whole neighborhood would be wonderful. I think that's part of what I've seen as North Camino Ramon specific plan, and I would love to see some of that incorporated in this. And then I was curious about a question. I know the Parkway was an important part of City Walk. Is any of that integrated into the plan, or does it connect to the neighborhood in any way?
Yes, should I address the comments now?
Yeah.
We do have connectivity throughout the neighborhood. We could go back to one of the previous slides that shows the connectivity. I don't know whoever's managing that, but there's a nice generous setback along Camino Ramon, also along Norris Canyon and Executive Parkway, which the most of that frontage is actually the park. And so we do include meandering walks and connections from the houses, from the paseos throughout the community to activate the street and the connections. And then there's a north-south street as well through the community that really extends through to Bishop Ranch and the future City Walk. So we've been working close with the city and we'll continue to do so on those connections.
Okay, and thank you. I was just going to say, great presentation. It's great to see that we're building this all connected and it's not in silos, and that's probably the best part of this. So appreciate, all the feedback you've already taken from staff, including the park in there and connectivity to the parkway, and some of the same amenities that people will experience, right, living in that downtown area of San Ramon. So thanks.
Sure.
And I had a couple comments.
Okay, I have one more after you, if that's
no, go ahead,
acceptable.
Jim.
Okay, so I have just a very quick question since we have both Sunset and Summerhill here. When we approved the City Walk, this was with the 25-year timeline, but I also recall that that section of BR 26 is among some of the later planned build outs. So in this project, what is your timeline should we approve it for being built? Because at some point, those residents will be looking, at construction farther down the road. So what is your anticipated build out?
And I believe Jerry
should we approve?
Jerry, did you want to address that? Your hand is up.
No, I'll let Denise address that question, but I had
Your hand is up for something else?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to speak before I go 20 minutes? Okay.
I'll let Denise go first though.
Go ahead, Denise.
Okay. The proposed, the estimated period of construction and delivery of homes is about 4 to 6 years. And then we would estimate breaking ground around 2023. So I think really right now, the way that City Walk is, or that the Bishop Branch is built, there's a lot of those connections already exist. And so I think it would, flow seamlessly through the existing connections. And I'll let Jerry expand on when they plan construction for the City Walk project. But it's not unusual for communities to be built out in phases.
Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to address one of the questions that came up. I'm not sure if it was Commissioner Wallace or where it came from, but there was a question about the commercial aspect of the North Camino Ramon specific plan and its viability. And as we said when we were processing City Walk, that kind of retail that was planned for the North Camino Ramon specific plan really is not viable in today's day and age. And I think, and Denise can add to this, but I do believe the intent is to update and amend this current specific plan to eliminate the need for the commercial retail type uses in that area, as they really aren't viable. And I think when you look at your last retail study that you did, which was one of the genesis for the rezoning of the 2600 site to CCMU, was you need to protect the retail that you have. And when you look at the location of that housing development in relation in its proximity to Whole Foods, its proximity to the grocery shopping at the Camino or Crow Canyon Commons, it's right in the middle of both of those. And so you really don't have enough critical mass of residents that would allow for all these little mom and pop shops in the first floor of these deals that was originally planned, over a decade ago to work. And so it really does need to be rethought. And I think that I don't know, the other elements of that North Camino Ramon specific plan that might tie closer to Crow Canyon Commons, which would make sense. But given the location of this one, it doesn't seem in our mind that it would make sense to do that there.
Okay, I'm seeing no others. It's back to me to finish this off. I would just say, go ahead, Jerry.
Sorry, it was one more thing I wanted to mention, is that there was a lot of people worried and thinking about traffic, but you have to remember there was a 560,000 square foot office building here that generated significantly more traffic than what the 400 homes will generate. So you'll see, I'm sure when they do their traffic analysis, that there'll be less trips in and out of this site than there was for that commercial office.
Yeah. I would just say, I'm looking to see if Eric was going to jump out there. Better not. I would just say the same thing I told you when you came before me with City Walk, and we're going to trade 800,000 square feet of commercial for this. And I go, no, you're not. You keep it. I have no idea and nobody here does, what's going to happen in 15, 20 years. And this whole thing is based around an idea that you are reducing vehicle miles traveled. You're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. A company comes in here that everybody and their brother wants, and you have to go up 5 stories. Everybody's going to complain. Wait till they read the legislation. It says, oh yeah, we get 3 extras, but part of the density bonus. To me, I want to address something Gene said. I didn't know there was a City Walk project when I brought this up, but I've seen it in other places. So I specifically asked that our pedestrian bridge over Bollinger Canyon Road be 16 feet wide instead of the normal 10, because it didn't take a genius, especially one that lives on the Iron Horse Trail, to realize how much the traffic on that thing alone is increasing, especially with the new legislation to take MTSOs into account whenever you're pedestrian, bike, transit, et cetera. And CCTA does look at that. We have to do that as part of our action plan. I like the idea of what Scott was talking about with the electric, because natural gas is just about dead in the state. You're probably going to find that out in the next 16 months when it gets legislated out, the solar part of it. I don't think I would wire every building. What I would do though is what I've told other builders. I'd have the option. We used to do that with air conditioning here. Nobody wouldn't take it now, but at the time, a lot of people would just say, oh, it's wired up and the electricity's to that point, and then when they want to add it, they ought to add it. The stuff that Scott was talking about is here now. I mean, I saw it for the first time 2018, and they are doing it, but you know, if things change, then, you know, if you're never going to get an electric car, you're not going to want to do it. We are looking for, we being LAVTA and CCCTA, going after a grant for a hydrogen bus. And they're very interested in Innovate 680. I'm sure you probably had a call too. If not, you're going to get one very soon because Gillig's interested in going to the hydrogen bus. The economics are there. And the transit system that we're talking about, that Bishop Ranch has been doing forever. Oddly enough, Crow Canyon Commons, I mean, Alex used to send a bus over there for lunch all the time. This is an old hat for him. And we had talked about punching the road through on Camino Ramon all the way to Norris too, which would make this more of that walkable community. I don't want to stick 7-Elevens in there, and that's pretty much what has happened, glorified out at Doherty Station. Retail is in trouble, folks. I mean, this is about as good a shift to something that can survive the next decade as I've seen, including San Ramon. But outside of that, I think you're on the right track. The paperwork and everything else you're going to have to do to satisfy these tough planning commissioners on you. And once again, Sabina Zafar has upstaged me to get the last word. You got it, Sabina, and then we're going to close out.
I just wanted to add on to the retail remarks I had. I agree with Jerry. Retail has changed. It has changed to much smaller storefronts. And an example I would give you is Boba Guys. And those of you you're aware, that's like 7 boba places in San Ramon, and there's always a line, hour-and-a-half long line. So we do have, you know, a community that comes to us all the time and says, we just don't have enough options to eat, enough places for community to go. And as we build more housing, I think we will get that footprint as well, where, you know, with a smaller storefront, with smaller shops, it doesn't have to be, you know, huge, massive stores, but something which is community centric. So think about it. I would, you know, challenge you to think about a little bit of how to build that community feeling, which would make our downtown and would make, you know, kind of a vibrant work, live, play place for everybody who moves over there. So just a little comment there.
Okay, we'll go to war on that one. No biggie. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. We unfortunately have another one after this, but I think there were some good comments, and we were able to confer some information to the public on RENA and again on this project. I'm sure there'll be a lot more thought brought into bear when it starts being processed. I would just leave Jerry with this one thought: Hula Grill. Just keep them in mind, Jerry. I'll be calling them again. I'm sending them letters, and I'm giving them your card. With that, we are adjourned. This was a special meeting. I will tell the people that are online if they want to stay on. Our next regularly scheduled council meeting is tonight in about, Christina, what do we need? 10 minutes? 10 minutes to do this. Where'd she go? I can't see her on my thing.
So the council meeting is another link. This meeting will be closed out.
Okay, so we got to go to the other link. Let's take 10 minutes to do that. Come back. In fact, 7:30 sound good for you guys? We'll start at 7:30 instead of 7. Thank you, commissioners. You got your work cut out for it, but that is opportunity. Scott, oh, you're just saying bye.